This is SSN
Story Studio Network.
Welcome to the Toronto Region Board of Trade's Hit Go podcast. I'm the board's president and CEO, Jan De Silva. As radio DJs used to say, the hits just keep on coming. We have another set of bright climate economy experts on our third panel. If you haven't heard our first two episodes, you can stream them for more angles to this massive issue. Today's topic is gigantic. It brings the complexity of technology, the element of person power, and time travel to the table. We're talking about retrofits. Now, the word alone might well feel daunting, and for good reason. As scary and intimidating as retrofits are, we have to face facts. The built environment generates 40% of annual global CO2 emissions. Thankfully, we've got incredibly intelligent, innovative, and resourceful folks in our region, and three of them just happen to be on today's episode. Daryl Chow is the Director of Business Development for GeoSource Energy. His company is a global retrofit implementation specialist that works on big, impactful projects, which you'll hear all about. Doug Weber's the co-founder and principal of Purpose Building, which is a team of building performance experts who are moving the retrofit needle. And Tim Stoate rounds out the panel. He's VP Development of Efficiency Capital. EC works with building owners to install upgrades that save and make everyone more money while reducing GHGs. Our host, Craig Rattan, is back. He's an alumnus of the board and passionate climate policy expert. He'll get our panelists to clarify the scale of the challenge, share reasons why organizations take on retrofits, and compare Ontario to other global jurisdictions. The conversation covers much more than this, though. We hope you enjoy it.
I want to dive right into the conversation because this is such a big topic and it's literally all around us. Daryl, I'm hoping you can help us set the context to start the conversation. Can you help us understand the scale of the challenge we're facing with retrofits?
I don't know if I can. I mean, it's massive. So first of all, thanks very much for the invite. Pleasure to be here with both Doug and Tim. So I appreciate the work that's happening here at the Toronto Region Board of Trade. I guess, context setting around retrofit. So what do I know? I don't know. Like globally, we see declarations by over 120 countries, Canada included, committed to achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Nationally here, we've got several provinces like BC, Quebec, Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, Labrador. They've all signaled their commitment. But, closer to home, like on a city level, I guess, places like Vancouver, Guelph, Hamilton, Toronto, Halifax, they've all made commitments towards mitigating climate change. And I'm sure that with the leadership of these particular cities, there's a lot more municipalities to follow. So I guess in general, what does it mean? To achieve net zero emissions, it means, we either have to emit no greenhouse gas or we have to somehow offset greenhouse gas somehow. So, in an urban area, we know the buildings are the largest source of GHG emissions, say in Toronto specifically. I think that buildings account for over 50% of our total emissions. Inside of those buildings, approximately 60% are single-family residential homes, but 40% of those are commercial and institutional buildings. So, we got a lot of buildings. These emissions are primarily from the use of fossil fuels, the use of natural gas, and what that is to use to heat our spaces as well, heat our water. So on the topic of retrofits, I guess, in Toronto specifically, there's the net zero existing building strategy, and what that requires that all owners of existing buildings in Toronto to decarbonize by 2040. So that's all of our buildings in 17 years. So I don't know, last time you looked around, there's a lot of buildings out there. 17 years is not a lot of time. My perspective is, what's necessary? Probably like some kind of a deep carbon retrofit. And that's what the process of improving and updating your building systems with the goal of minimizing your GHG emissions. So that can include, reducing the building's energy demand. It can include replacing and or electrifying your heating and cooling mechanical systems. And are producing on-site renewable energy of sorts. So, that the challenge is massive. I think that there's a massive opportunity as well to kind of really dig in and create a lot of opportunities across the board to feed in to helping solve for this problem.
Fantastic. Thanks, Daryl. Really lays the scene there. Tim, I'd like to ask you to go a bit deeper into the topic of deep retrofits and this understanding of what help us understand what are some of the different components that are part of that. Daryl mentioned things like the building envelope or maybe some of the equipment. What's included in that process and what isn't?
Yeah, thanks for that question, and thanks for inviting me here today to speak on this topic. So what Daryl has mentioned a couple of the items that we would consider as part of a deep energy retrofit. For outside cladding, inside insulation, insulating roofs, and replacing windows would be included in a deep energy retrofit, as well as including renewable energy sources as well. On top of that, you would probably have done or wanted to do a full deep mechanical replacement, and sometimes that is the removal of and elimination of anything that does burn fossil fuels, potentially replacing it with some kind of heat pump system, air source or geo exchange, and those would all be included. What wouldn't be included necessarily would be the replacement of or the repair of a garage, in a large high-rise residential property. That kind of thing would not be included. Outdoor planting of trees, etc., wouldn't necessarily be included in a deep energy retrofit, but mainly we're looking at both passive and active mechanicals.
Thanks for clarifying that, Tim. Doug, this sounds like a big challenge. There's a lot of different. It also sounds quite frankly expensive in terms of all the different things that need to happen as part of this. So, what motivates this behavior? Is it why does someone choose to do a big retrofit? Is it just about the carbon emissions?
Well, I think that is the question. Why would somebody do this? And I think even some of our own clients are asking themselves, why should I do this? When should I do that? When should I do this? That is the key question. And I think it starts with the science. We need to cut carbon, as Daryl said. Then usually our clients are thinking about their own personal commitments or their corporate commitments. And from that, they need to start taking action. I think that, the key thing is once you've made the decision, as Daryl said, that you want to align with science, you need to get something like a 50% reduction across your portfolio by 2030. Though we have some big projects going right now where we are making major retrofits that are saving or reducing emissions at an asset by over 70% in carbon. So it's not that we don't know how to do it, but it is a big investment, and it comes down to how strong is the commitment, how confident are you that this will drive value, and probably more practically, is this an asset that you have planned capital expenditures for? You want to align these kinds of investments with other plans for either end-of-life replacement or repositioning assets.
How important are incentives at this point? Is there still a gap in terms of what is profitable for a retrofit to occur?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the incentives are very important in motivating change. One of the issues is that the time horizons that most real estate investors are thinking in are not aligned with the time horizons of climate change. Most real estate investors think 5 years out max, and I don't think there's a lot of confidence yet in the market that the implications of not having a low carbon asset are going to come home to roost within the next 5 years. There's debate about that. I think that people are a little are underestimating how quickly the world's going to change in terms of regulations, in terms of tenant expectations, in terms of investor expectations. But it's something in the range. It's certainly within 10 years and maybe within 5 years. But most asset or investment decisions in real estate have a max 5-year time horizon, and so they can still believe or convince themselves that it's not important.
That time horizon element is a really important piece of this. And I can imagine on the financial side, there are some big implications there. Tim, I know those are challenges that you and Efficiency Capital are looking to help tackle.
Yeah, I think Doug's laid out the challenge really well. And what we see three kinds of opportunities in terms of the market and how our groups can help like ourselves is the long-term financing that we have available at below market rates. The incentives still exist, which, as Doug pointed out, has the ability to move the market, and we think that policy change is coming. There's a lot of carrots right now, and those carrots have existed for a number of years. There's a significant interest at the federal government level to provide the kind of capital that it takes to do deep energy retrofits. And so we are an aggregator of that capital and bring that to market. And there are significant incentives available from organizations like Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation that could pay a significant amount of the total capital cost as long as you achieve a certain expected reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. What the carrots tell us is that eventually the sticks will cut too. So and those will be incentives by themselves for apartment building owners and condominium and co-op owners. There will be an intensity levels that they'll have to meet. Otherwise, as they have in New York, there will be certain levels of fines or costs associated with ownership of a building that does not have a high level of energy efficiency.
Thanks. Sounds like there are a lot of reasons to get going on these projects. What's holding us back from being able to really attract this at scale? Do we have the capacity and the capabilities here to tackle this?
We have a project now where we're working with a client and doing carbon audits on 80 assets, 40 residential, 40 office, and developing plans. And it's back to this. I talked about the time horizon being a challenge, but and that we keep pushing things out. But the time horizon is a challenge in terms of not enough time as well. If we look at the science of climate change, we need to achieve a 50% reduction by 2030 collectively. It takes 3 to 5 years to deliver a large retrofit project on a large commercial asset. We have 8 years until it's 2030. So basically half your assets should be in play in the next 2 or 3 years, or we're not going to hit the target. So, and it's back to Daryl's point. If you look out there's a lot of buildings. If you imagine half of the buildings in Toronto going through a retrofit in the next 8 years, a major retrofit. We're working on a 2 million square foot office building now and delivering a $40 million retrofit project. So that's one building. We do not have the people to fix half the buildings in Toronto in the next 8 years, or the equipment.
I would absolutely agree with that. So, I mean, you're talking about, Craig, yes, like what is it going to take? I think from the outset, our perspective right now is just, commitment to act today. We already know that the solutions are available. The technology is available. As Tim mentioned, I mean, there is money in play. There are ways to attract capital. There are ways to kind of incentivize. I think it really just takes asset owners to take that bold step, make that commitment, and just start moving. It's just been so much inertia to date around needing more data, trying to find the next widget for the solutions, trying to find different tools to help in that decision-making process. Everything is available to us today. The technology is here. The money is here. From our perspective, and as Doug was saying, like if we underestimate this rate of change it's coming, we actually need to start preparing people. Doug just mentioned we don't have the resources, we don't have the human capital to do this, we don't have the workforce to do this. So I think in as much as there are great incentives to help developments kind of go and make that decision, part of this flow of dollars may need to be considered moving into training and upskilling a workforce that's necessary to make this change happen.
I'm going to jump in on that. I think that what we have is, I think we've got the high level and a high quality of the professional service providers that we require. and a significant number of them available today that can provide the kind of technical expertise like Doug and his team do and Daryl and his team do. But it's, there's three kinds of types of labor that are required for these energy retrofits. And they're in the professional services, the technical, hands-on, the people have to do the work, and there's pre and post prep labor that needs to be in place. And I think we're missing a lot of the middle pieces, numbers 2 and 3. And we need to, as Daryl said, really ramp up the technical training. Otherwise, we're going to be drawing from an immigration pool, and we do that already. A significant number of people that are working in the trades, in high-level, high-skilled jobs are from outside the country and outside our province. And we have to continue to do that in order to be able to reach these targets. The technology, as Daryl's pointed out, we have every piece of technology that we require in order to be able to get where we're going today. It exists today. We don't have to invent any. If we didn't invent anything new from this point onward, we would have everything we require in order to be able to get where we need to go. We look at this from a point of view, Doug points out, in terms of the time horizons. We look at business cases every day that are associated with doing energy retrofits. We really, really work hard with the building owners to work through creating as much as we possibly can, a significant improvement in net operating income or free cash flow. And that, from an apartment owner's perspective, really helps them build the case. And even in the long-term assets, we are setting those long-term assets in terms of the financing of those long-term assets. We set them up so that they are cash flow neutral at worst. In the worst case, mainly they're cash flow positive, even the 20-year assets, because when they're combined with other mechanicals and with the kinds of renewable energy opportunities that are available, we can make the business case in many cases. Especially if you're talking to someone who's a renovator and seller 3 to 5 years down the road, that business case will have been demonstrated by the energy savings and the increases in operating revenue that come from additional rent because the nature of the building has changed. So we work very hard to work on those business cases, and we see a lot of really positive business cases at this point.
It sounds like there's a big piece here in terms of building owner and business owner education and awareness of that these solutions are out there. Even just hearing that all the technology's here already. I think about how they must be assessing and thinking about risk in terms of what's the risk of acting now and maybe feeling like you have imperfect information, the risk of acting later. I can see that there might be a desire to go to what feels like a safe middle ground of maybe let's just do a bit at a time. Is there a way to do just a bit now and a bit more later? How do you handle some of those conversations with business owners who think that maybe there are incremental small steps that they can take? Is that an option?
I think your question about risk is the right one. It is the question that owners are asking themselves. What if I move too early? And I think that fear is diminishing as time passes and more people are jumping in. But it used to feel like everybody was standing on the edge of the pool waiting for someone to jump in, and we're seeing a few people in. So I think that fear of being first is now passing, but there is still I met with a client just the other day who was saying, I just don't see it in the next 5 years. It's coming, but I don't see it in the next 5 years. And I think it is this momentum that we have in the real estate industry where we've been so successful doing something. Why would we change? And I think so. I think that barrier is there. But your question about whether to do it piecemeal, it depends on the asset. It's the one point I would make again about timing is, and it ties in with what Tim said, is you don't want to miss opportunities. Buildings have natural cycles of renewal. There's times at which you're making investments in replacing equipment that's end of life. And if you miss that opportunity, you're typically making a 20-year bet, not a 5-year bet. You put a new boiler in a building, you are assuming that this thing is going to generate value for the next 20 years. And I think that's the way that we speak to owners to get them to think about the decision they're making, because you can break them out of that 5-year cycle thinking by saying you are making a long-term bet here? Do you really believe that 10 years from now that's going to be looked on as a good decision? And there may be a short term when you're paying a premium for a low carbon asset, but it will be well within the life cycle of your investment flip to be a positive.
There's definitely, a view from many building owners, and especially, and I say this with all respect, those who've been successful and are more mature in terms of age, where they've done it that way for a long period of time, and they're going to continue to do it their way. We find that there are those owners that are younger have a different view, have a different approach. We don't actually have to explain energy efficiency to a lot of our clients that are a lot younger. We don't have to explain carbon and the issues associated with that. So the conversation moves quickly to, let's have a look at the business conversation. What's the business case? Can we make this work? And sometimes you do have buildings that lend themselves and opportunities to lend themselves to going into shorter and medium term measures at the same time. We've always discussed, and Doug has known this, knows this about me forever, right? Comprehensive energy retrofits are the highest net present value that you can possibly generate, and they work the best over the long run. If I'm making, we can make a profit providing capital to those projects, and with the project IRRs make sense to us, then you, the building owner, will be making a profit as well out of that particular investment. So it's getting the conversation to talk about, really focus in on the kinds of returns that you can make, both, either out of the driving out the costs and then selling the property later. The net present value is going to be of the cash flows improves. Therefore, the value of the building has to improve in terms of in the market size.
Thanks. I'd like to turn for a second to look at the technology side of the equation. We've talked a lot about the decision making that building owners are doing, and one of the other reasons the Toronto Region Board of Trade is so interested in building up the climate economy is really this opportunity for our local businesses to innovate, to succeed, find opportunities to export globally. So is there opportunity, what are some of the, solutions and successes that we can have with the technologies we're developing here? Daryl, what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess, for us, we are a technology company. It just so happens that our technology manifests in a drilling program that allows for the installation of geoexchange systems. Given that it takes so much time for some projects to develop and the decisioning to happen, we really do appreciate having the early adopters select us as part of their solution mix. I think that, we've proven time and again that the technology is entirely feasible. It's ready today. But what we fear is that, with the kind of lack of motivation, if you will, to get more projects underway right now, we're seeing other markets open up that are actually hungry for the technology itself. So in as much as the technology is here, we are available within the Toronto region, there are other kind of market factors that are opening up. And, what we don't want to do is be in a position where, there's other places that the company can go and develop and leave the region high and dry and not having capacity to offer solutions when the decision time comes. So I think that is, for us, technology is here, it's tried and true, but that hesitation to adopt it at current is really difficult for small to medium-sized companies trying to scale. And I think that that's something that we need to be mindful of. If this idea of, the time horizon, that underestimating the rate of change, if it happens tomorrow, we just don't have enough innovation teams that are specialized in helping these retrofits go in place. And that, to me, is the risk, but it's also the opportunity. Is to foster development of technology, allow them to scale regionally here, and that way we can actually build the bench strength necessary to be a really big, contributor to mitigating climate change nationally.
You raised a really good point there, Daryl, about the global competition for this investment and for folks fighting to get that investment and the technologies active in their in their home places. I'm wondering how much does the Inflation Reduction Act in the U.S. what role is that playing? And in light of that, how do we try and ensure that Canada and especially the Toronto region is well positioned to compete for that investment and for the focus on reducing our emissions here?
Right. So I guess I'm not an expert on U.S. policy and whatnot, but I do know that the Inflation Reduction Act offers significant amounts of incentives in order for decarbonized projects, renewable energy projects to move ahead. So specifically for us, we're working in a state south of the border right now where there's a governor's mandate to decarbonize 2 million households, as it were. That's a lot. And when you have the state kind of making that declaration and everyone moving on it quite quickly, what's happened is that it's caused that market to look outside of their immediate boundaries within that whatever their 100-mile radius, as it were, because there just are no specialized practitioners to help with the demand currently. And I think that the more we see states in the U.S. specifically making these declarations and moving ahead, knowing that the money and the financial incentive is in place, it really poses, for us, it's an opportunity to move in that direction, but it also puts our region at risk because you're going to experience, another iteration of brain drain. You're going to see technology leave to go for greener pastures. So I see that, policy initiatives like the IRA really kind of being an opportunity for national domestic companies here to scale in a way that may not have been thought about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think one of the I think there is a competition now for talent, for sure. But one of the things that I think we as an industry locally need to be promoting more is the fact that Toronto is and can continue to be one of the best places to create green real estate. If you think about our advantages, we have clean electricity, we don't have hurricanes, we have lots of fresh water, and we have a highly stable and educated population. There was a study done, it's maybe close to 10 years old now, but a UK real estate company realized that they should be thinking about how resilient cities are as they globally invest. And so they did an analysis of both physical risks and social risks, and the most resilient city in the world was Toronto. And I think that you combine that with the fact that we have a path. Our grid right now has emissions that are about 10% of the average emissions in the US. So that's one of the reasons that we are moving faster than them with decarbonization, because we actually have a solution. So I think that I think there's an opportunity for Toronto to be the place for head office buildings for global corporations to locate their head offices, because we have a path to a low carbon, resilient economy that is much closer at hand than most other places in the world.
I think, on top of that, what Daryl and Dago said, we see a lot of new technologies come across our desk on a regular basis that are, people looking to that are developed in the GTA and the Golden Horseshoe area, and where they're developed by local, technically capable people, and there's a fantastic set of opportunities there for people to look at those investments, and there's significant capital available to help those companies scale, and significant amount of talent to help those companies scale in the GTA. And there's also, also, to Daryl's point, we can export that technology as well. We can continue to maintain the development of that technology here through government programs like IRAP and SHRED. And we also have the Export Development Corporation, which is really helping Canadian companies develop their technologies in order to be able to export them, with the jobs staying in Canada. So there's some great opportunities there.
This has been a great conversation, and I feel like I have a better sense of the real scale, but also the optimism, the fact that there's a lot that is out there right now, and that we're in a place that we really can tackle it. So I want to close off with maybe a round of rapid fire questions to each of you. If you could pick one thing that you wanted governments to do right now to help advance retrofits, and also one piece of advice to a business owner as they think about, whether now is the time for them to really lean into this, what would those, that request and that piece of advice be?
It's going to get more expensive the later the wait to do it. So you might as well start thinking about it today, because you'll actually make yourself more money in the long run. If there was a government policy, I like the policy that's been established in the United States about if you aren't reaching a certain level of energy intensity reduction or energy intensity level by a particular date, that the stick will be some kind of fine or increase in your tax rate.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the advice to the government is don't wait too long to bring out the sticks. If that's, I don't know if that's the right word, but basically you use incentives. You use incentives to prove the concept, and we've done that now. We have a number of clients that are moving ahead on trajectories to achieve 50% carbon reduction across their portfolios by 2030. Incentives have helped to motivate that change. So the government incentives have proved the concept. Now they need to raise the floor so that it's no longer an option to follow that path. In terms of advice to clients, it's don't miss an opportunity. You are making capital investments, significant capital investments in real estate annually. Don't miss the opportunity to redirect those investments to deliver a lower carbon asset.
I think from my seat, if I were to have that ask of government, I would ask for better alignment and better synergies across all levels. So, the feds need to talk to the province need to talk to municipalities, and really, together collaborate on a strategic path of how do we get this thing done. Get in the sandbox together, hash it out, be bold, and make the right decisions. Right? Like, we don't have the time. And there's just too much talking and not enough doing. So on that, I guess advice to clients would be, be confident that the technology exists today. This is not new. It's not rocket science. It's very elegant, very obvious, no-brainer solutions that happen every day. We've got the early adopters. Be bold, make those decisions, right? If you're thinking about, the complexities about long-term operational, issues and whatnot, it's no different than business as usual per se, as far as we're not layering on another piece of this is what you need to do, be mindful of. Technology is being designed in a way to be user-friendly. So it's not complicated, it's not scary, right? Just be bold, make that decision, and let's get working.
A great note to end on in terms of thinking about getting beyond action or getting beyond talking and getting to action. Couldn't think of a better panel today. Doug, Daryl, Tim, thanks so much for your time and for sharing your insights with our listeners.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to our retrofit episode of the Hit Go Climate Economy podcast. If you're thinking differently about climate action and where retrofits, fit into that, please share your thoughts in a review. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch future episodes and revisit our last two wherever you found this one. We hope you're inspired to share this with anyone in your network connected to retrofits or to your social channels with the Toronto Region Board of Trade tag. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to you joining us next time on Hit Go.
This is Story Studio Network.